Yeah. So welcome back to our online certification program on Code Spring, and today is day 11. So yesterday we had stopped discussing about RESTful services. So I'll continue from where we left yesterday. So I was discussing, RESTful development with Spring MVC is slightly different than what we would have expected, because Spring MVC does not adhere to the specifications provided by JAX-RS, right? So how does it make any difference? It makes a big difference in terms of API actually. So you will use a different set of APIs, okay, to develop your REST services than what you would use for JAX-RS. So that is the big difference out there. Otherwise, functionality wise, you can develop all of them as it is. Okay. So here if you see, we were discussing about the status code, right? So in REST services, there are a number of new status codes having special semantic meanings, right? So the list of those status codes is available as a link on slide number 735, so that you can just check. Now, where is it? Response status. Now, whenever the request is successful, then what should be the status code? We can set that value, okay, by using an annotation called response status. So this response status annotation can be applied to individual REST methods. So whenever the call is successful, this will get this is the status code which will get set. So there is a class called HTTP status, which has a number of constant values, and you can use these classes, use this constant values to represent the status. So this is available from starting from Spring 4.3. Okay. Now the response and request will have to be defined. Okay, so whenever you define some get, post, put, any kind of method, you will notice that they can have body, right? So can a get response have a body? Can a get response have a body? Can a get request has a body?
Get
No.
request not
No.
responsible.
Okay, first question: can a get response can have a body?
Yes.
Sukanya?
Yes.
Yes. Get request cannot have a body, right?
Right.
Whenever there is a body, it must be marshaled into it must be marshaled into an object, Java object, so that we can do our business logic, right? So in Spring, there are a number of inbuilt message converters available, which can transparently convert an XML, an XML uh, message into a Java object, and I say vice versa. Similarly for JSON, similarly for other formats. So these converters work transparently and give you those functionalities out of the box. What you need to do is, you need to just mention one thing: response status request body. So in your method, you can specify that you want that incoming request body, okay, to be converted into a object of type order. Of course, there should be there should be the assumption here is that the request body will have an order object indeed. Okay, so now no matter what is the format the order object is there, either XML or JSON, it will get converted into an order object transparently. Okay, so you can use request body to marshal the incoming request body into an object. All right, any questions? Next, there is a response body also. So response body will work just the opposite. It will unmarshal an object, Java object into an XML or JSON string. Okay, so again, you need to notice where you apply request body and response body. Request body must be applied on an input param of the method. Response body should always be applied on the returned value. Okay, can you see that? Here again, no view resolver or no UI is involved, right? So now the next point is how does the client and the server determine what should be the format of data exchange? Correct? So that could be resolved through a couple of request and response headers. So whenever the request is sent by the client, one header will be set called accept. Accept that tells the server what formats of data the server expects. What formats of data the client expects, and accordingly the server can generate that data and that format data. So if you say accept XML application / XML, then here we can set the XML text string, right? But also the server will set another header called content type. All right, content type. So there you can see, based on the accept and content type, we can achieve content negotiation. This is called CONNEG, content negotiation. Now, there is a syntactic sugar API available where you can combine the controller and response body annotations into a single annotation called REST controller. Okay, this is available since Spring 4. So here, now we will look at how we can access the data, okay, of an HTTP request and response using a couple of special annotations. Okay, one second. So here, if you see, let's say if I want to set headers or control content that is returned, then we can use this HTTP entity and response entity classes. So you can use this HTTP header and then set it incrementally by using some boilerplate APIs actually. So HTTP entity will represent the complete HTTP response object or request object, and then you can use response entity to construct your response in a chained manner. Okay, is it any question on this slide? So you can also set the response data programmatically without using response response body annotation also. So sometimes we might like to explicitly set the request header plus the body both, right? So in that case you can use this entity HTTP entity API rather than just HTTP response object. Okay. Now, whenever you send a post request, what is the type of operation you would like to do? Let's say the post request will do new data creation, right? So can the where is it? Yeah. So what should the create API return as input as a response? Yeah, Sukanya. What are you
Yeah.
saying? Yeah, go ahead.
So create basically should like it may return a boolean like whether it's successful like
Okay.
or yeah, if it is just a create or save, it may return the boolean or something, or maybe some other status like like in database, like we have that like once
Okay.
like how many row numbers, like something like that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, but the question here is, once the client creates a record, would the client be interested in deleting the record also?
Yes.
So how will the client, uh, delete the record if you don't pass in the return, if you pass something like what you suggested?
Last,
Yes,
last,
yes.
last
Einhard?
insert unique ID.
Exactly. So sending a Boolean value will not be very helpful here. Well, you can send any value pass, you can return any value, right? But it makes sense to return, since you are developing REST, right? RESTful services. So it makes sense to return the URI of the newly created resource, right? I mean,
Okay, but why would we return like a from like UI to backend perspective, right? UI doesn't need to know like what my backend like the backend structure or something like that. I think that's a security issue. Like if let's say if we create some record, right, and later we need to like delete something, or let's say that we create some account for some user, and then later like we need to delete the account, so UI should have the user information already, right? Like user information, and UI can pass the parameter and backend can search based on the like search and then find the record and delete it. Like, like do we need something like something else like a database, let's say primary key? We don't need to pass it to the front end.
Yeah, a well placed argument, definitely. I'm not saying you need to pass the ID itself. I mean the primary key itself. Anything which is unique and which can uniquely identify that record, not only the primary key, right?
That should be backend job, isn't it? Like
Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right. So what I'm saying is, first of all, Boolean will not work, right? That is
yeah,
one thing.
Boolean. Yeah, Boolean.
Ah,
No, Boolean in the sense of like the why it will, because UI. Let's say that there is a form, right? And
okay.
someone is creating or someone is creating their account, and
Okay.
UI will capture the first name, last name, all those things, and create the record, and we just say yes, done. It's a success. Then UI can have that confirmation. And later on, anyway, nowadays in UI, everything is cached, right? Angular has
Right.
cache. So
Yeah.
Angular will have the data in the object that this is the first name, last name, and I want to uh, fetch something or update something. Then Angular can again send the object, and it's sole responsibility of backend to uniquely identify the record. Maybe the mapping can stay in the backend, that user ID to something. Definitely some unique thing will be there, and backend can update the record.
All right. Thank you. Your company must be sending you everywhere to defend the architecture, right? Just kidding. Okay. Hmm. Ah, yeah. Yes. So, see, the problem is what you said is all correct. Okay. But I have a simple point. Let's say we are saying we will not return anything substantial after the create operation. Okay. Now the point here is there is a grid in your application. Okay, Angular grid. Now you are trying to implement delete, where each row has a delete button. When you click a row, delete button in a row, that row should be deleted from the server also. Okay.
Sure.
Ah. So how would you do this deletion?
So
I mean, yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Good,
So
good.
yeah. So when actually the grid is displayed, right? So that was a get operation. Okay, we like a get data to show the grid. Get operation or whatever operation we can do even post, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. No problem.
So once we have the data, and yes, like the backend can, yes, I agree with you. The backend can create something, maybe some kind of identifier, but it will definitely uh, it, some kind of mapping, I would say, okay, which will not directly depend on a database or something like that.
Correct.
So someone will hack, like someone will.
Yeah, we should not expose primary key. That is one
Exactly.
important point, right?
Yes,
That is.
yes. So yes, and then see, the thing is that like it can have like each row maybe like a one column or two column combination of the column can determine the record identically or uniquely, or yes, backend can, I agree, backend can send some kind of mapping, and clicking on the delete button you can send the mapping ID, and backend can find that exactly what record it is and delete the that
Right.
record.
Thank you. So now the question we have, now we agree that there should be a unique identifier returned by the create service, so that the client can uniquely identify each row and send you that identifier back, correct?
Yes.
While, while deleting or update also.
Right.
Now the question here is, what would that unique identifier be, right? How will we generate that unique identifier? What could be one of the possible strategies, basically? Can we represent, and we said the primary key is not the option here, correct?
Right.
Yes. So what can be done here? Any suggestions?
Random generated number.
Random generated number, Suganya, that will be a problem, because later on when you have to know that number, right? Yeah, sorry. Your suggestion is correct, actually. Sorry, I was thinking in a different scenario, right? Yes. So if I generate a random number, then we can keep that random number stored in a column, right? And then we can return that random number also, right?
Yes.
Now, this discussion is getting really interesting, actually, my friends. So just give me a second. So let's say a random number 45 is generated, okay, for an entity customer. So this is what we are suggesting as of now should be returned, right? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So now this is one entity. Can the same random number be generated for another entity?
No, it will be basically unique for
Random
user.
numbers are not unique, Sukanya.
No, I said like not random. Like I wanted to mean like the unique generator. Unique.
Okay. All right. Some unique UUID kind of.
Right.
So can that same UUID generate the same unique number for two different entities?
No.
Why not? It can. See, the point here is, cutting the long story short, if I want to represent, okay, the uniqueness, what you need a number, of course, okay, plus the name of the entity. If you just think over it, okay, this is what we would arrive at, actually, ultimately. Okay, the combination. This will make every record unique. Just to give you another perspective, you have two tables, customer and order. At some point of time, both will have a row with the same primary key. Primary keys are unique at the table level, right? Not at the database level. Correct, no? So what I'm saying here is that just a unique number, whether it is primary key or some generated by some other means, is not going to be unique. What is going to be unique is the combination of the entity plus a number, some unique number, right? Generated by UUID or something, anything like that.
So are you just trying to like explain the URI? You are in the URI actually you will have a unique URL and the value. Oh, that definitely. I thought that URI is unique anyway. So
right. So the point here is, if you look at different scenarios and different architecture, what should be returned from create method of a post call, right? Post service, then we agree that it should return a URI, not a true or a primary key or something like that, right? So we should return a URI, unique, which will be unique for every record, right? No matter in which table we are talking about, right? So that we agree. Guys, are we in agreement on that? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So that's what I was just trying to explain, why we need a URI to return from a create method. So if you see, there is a utility API called URI components builder. okay, URI component builder in Spring MVC, which can do this job for us. So it has a fluid API which can be called in a chained manner, and you can create your URI in a very convenient manner. Right, like this. But you have an example here. Suppose what you would do is you will create a string. First, you will create a string literal with placeholders. So order ID and item ID are placeholders here, and you can then use this URI component builder API and its associated APIs to construct a dynamic URI for each record possible. All right. So Servlet URI component builder. This is another option you have. If this avoids the hard coding of the URL. So this is another approach you can have a look at. So these are two options to create the URI. So you can use these APIs as a return value in your create APIs. Okay. So ultimately, if you see, we have covered a lot of annotations. So if you notice, the entire Spring MVC REST development depends upon a number of annotations, and these are those annotations actually. So just to summarize it, retrieving a representation will require a get call, right? And that get call will have a header except that will tell the server what is the format the response should be decided in, and the content type should be set in the response. All right. Creating a new resource. Door. Hello. Yeah. All right. So this is the complete example of a create API where you will finally return a header, a URI. Now, how will you return this URI? In the body or somewhere else?
That's in the body.
You will return in the body, right?
Yes.
But it's again, in REST standard practice is that the URI is actually returned. Where is it? As a header, response header, okay, called location. Technically speaking, nobody can stop you from setting this URI in the body. But the standard practice in REST, if you follow the RESTful principles, it says that while creating an API, creating a record, the newly created URI should be set as a response header called location. Okay. So in the exam, they will ask you these same precise questions actually. So be ready for that. Technically, what is possible and what is recommended are two different things. Okay. All right. Now, update. So if you want to do an update, then the response status code would be 204, not 202 or 200, something like that. When you create a new record, the response status code should be 201. That is again the standard, standard followed in REST development. And finally, delete. In case of delete also, you set a status code of 204 only. All right. Now you have developed the RESTful web service. Now how to consume this RESTful service? Let us see that. So in order to consume a RESTful web service, Spring provides a client, an API called REST template. REST template. This API is available as part of Spring MVC itself. So it has got corresponding method for each HTTP verb, and you can call them to make a respective method call. Okay, so there are overloaded methods available which can help you to make the calls in a very simple manner. So the first thing you would do is you will set the REST template. You will create an instance of REST template, just like we created an instance of JDBC template. All right, and here, if I want to search for a particular order whose ID is 1, then I can say get for object, and you can pass the ID. Okay, so that construction creating the complete dynamic URL and other details are taken care by get for object API transparently for us. We don't have to write lots of boilerplate, and the consumption of a RESTful service becomes way easier than what you would do with other APIs. All right. Similarly, creating a new record is just simple. Call the method post for location. So post for location. So if you see, it returns you the URI, right? Here, which is the new location. So post for location will again internally do all the magic. And finally, it will read the value of the location header and return you the URI. So you have to do zero work again in terms of handling the response at a micro level. Same goes with update. You just write one line of code and this is enough. Okay, delete one line of code and we are enough. Okay. So RESTful template, REST template, that is the API we can use for consuming any RESTful service. Okay, so we can use it to consume RESTful services written in other languages also. As you know, REST services are platform independent, so you should be able to consume any REST service developed, written, deployed on any platform. Okay. All right. So there are some other advanced topics which is not part of the discussion actually. So I will skip it. If you have any queries, you can let me know. Now let us see where is it? Last topic, I think, of our course, that is security, right? Spring security. Let me just, okay, where is Spring security? Spring security. By the way, just a quick question. How many of you have actually, some of have actually done any, implementation of authentication or authorization using JAS or something like that? Anyone? Has anyone done any kind of security implementation?
No, you mean JAS, JAAS, Java
Yeah,
Authorization Authentication.
yeah, that
Okay.
JP specification is there, no? JAS.
Yeah, got it. They are not done that one.
Okay. Right. So when it comes to security, very few developers actually really actively participate in the implementation of security. And that is quite natural. That there are manifold reasons. First of all, security should be pluggable in any product, right? You should not have hard coded or basically, inbuilt security in any product. The reason is simple. What the security frameworks keep changing, right? They are not just fixed. So new security threats arise, and that may make your current security module or framework completely redundant or vulnerable. So you may have to replace it. Correct. So when it comes to security, the security must be wrapped around your product. Okay, like a protective layer, and this layer should be, removable, pluggable at a later point in time. I should be able to replace it with much more advanced, much more capable security layers as I see fit. Okay, so let us see how security could be achieved in using Spring actually. So I think till a couple of years back, the most popular option to implement security in Java-based applications, Spring-based application was using JAS, Java, right? The J2E specification, Java authentication and authorization system, right? But nowadays, that is getting challenged by the Spring security module. So let us first try to understand what is the security we are trying to understand, trying to discuss here. So security, if you see in any application, has to be achieved by a number of steps. You can't just have one single step and it will take care of all aspects of your security, right? For example, how would you implement security of your data over the network when it is traveling over a network?
HTTPS.
HTTPS, brilliant, great, HTTPS. So that will provide you network level security. But how will we ensure that somebody is sending you a request and he or she is a genuine user of our product?
Certificate.
No, for example, when you try to say log into Facebook from your browser, how will Facebook know that you are a genuine user through some login password
Yes.
authentication?
Yes.
Right? Certificate could be an additional a second factor to that, right? But login password would require, right?
Yes.
Yes. Authentication. So authentication will give you access to the system, but again, many times we have to control access to individual resources on the server through access control, right? So an employee may be able to see his own salary details, but not others. But a manager should be able to do so, right? So what do we call that? Authorization. Okay. So what is a principal? A principal is any entity which can perform an action on your system. So a principal can be a human being or it could be another machine itself. Okay. So that is called a principal. Authentication is the is the authentication is the mechanism by which we verify the credentials of a principal. All right. Authorization is the mechanism to check if a particular principal is allowed to perform an action or not. Okay. So one quick question: can we have authorization without authentication?
No.
So that means they should be tightly coupled. First authentication, then authorization.
I guess so.
Uh, See, authorization should follow authentication. That is there, but it is not necessary that authentication and authorization should be clubbed together and implemented as a single unit, because let us take the other question. Do we need, which one of these two is required always? Which one is optional?
Authorization.
Authorization, right? So that means authorization and authentication should be developed as two different features which are pluggable, which can work together, but they should remain decoupled, right? Because authorization is optional, correct?
Yes.
Now, so that means authentication and authorization should remain decoupled, okay? And my friends, this is a very important topic actually. So I'm going to spend some time out here. So please hang out here. There would be at least 4 to 5 questions from this section, okay? This topic actually. Secured item. What is a secured item in an application? All your CSS, JS, HTML files, all your Java code, right? All your database, information in the database is secured item, okay? Okay. So authentication can be performed in various possible ways. Brush kiya? Good, good. Authentication can be done in different ways, and you can store the authentication credentials in a storage. The storage could not only be a relational database, you can store it in LDAP, or you can keep it in memory also. Nowadays, that is the trend we have actually. Okay. Authorization can again be done using different mechanisms, but generally we use the role-based mechanism for authorization because it is simple to follow and manage. So what is the motivation behind Spring Security? I mean, if we already have JAS, right? If you already have JAS, then what is the point of coming up with a new solution? See, the problem with JAS is it will run only in a application server. And all of us are pretty aware that the entire IT industry is moving from these kind of heavy application servers, right? So JAS is basically a non-starter a non-starter now. So that's why Spring provided, okay, a new framework for security so that it can replace a JAS-based system. Okay, you don't need to deploy your application on a heavy server and consume a heavy price for that. So here flexibility is another approach, another way to look at it. So you can switch from one mechanism, authentication mechanism, to another one if it doesn't suits you. If it doesn't suit you, you can just change it. Okay, you can switch the DB also, I mean the data source also with very minimal configuration. Okay. And apart from that, the security framework should be such that it is extensible. Now, what do we mean by security being extensible? Say, for example, today we have implemented authentication in our application by providing login password. Okay. But tomorrow what we found is that the login password has been compromised. Then what should I do? Say, for example, I have implemented authentication in my application, and I am keeping all my login passwords details in a relational database. Okay. Yeah. Okay, huh. चल रहा है चल चल उधर से देखो उधर से
वो बबल नहीं, ये बबल।
अच्छा वो मैं देख लूंगा डोंट वरी ओके हाँ so now how will you store that details in the DB
Encrypted.
so what will you encrypt the login or the password or both
Ideally, the password, I think.
no you can't encrypt both of them you have to encrypt only one of them because the match has to be done so the match will be done by matching the login right the
Right.
password will be encrypted, correct. So the password will be encrypted. Now let's say one fine day a hacker stole all my login password from that table by hacking that GitHub database. Is my system compromised?
Yes.
How
But it is
all the
encrypted.
but all the passwords are encrypted. Then even
Right.
if somebody knows the login ID and the encrypted password, they won't be able to log in, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the system is still compromised.
Right.
How? See, the hackers will first steal the all the credentials. Okay, of course they have the encrypted password, not the original password, but they can reverse engineer that password. They can run a dictionary attack against your encrypted password to guess what was the original password, and it's so simple. All they
Yeah.
have to do is all they have to do is run different combinations of characters using the algorithm what you have used in your project. So the only thing they need to know is what is the algorithm you are using for encryption. So if they have that information, they can run all combination of characters and match the encrypted cipher text with your stored password. So if the cipher text matches, then that was the original password. So through hit and trial, they can guess every password. Okay. So password, if you see, it's really funny. Passwords have become the biggest source of compromises actually. I mean, your password has become the entry point itself for hackers.
But yeah, I have a question here.
Yeah, tell me.
So, if those are encrypted, and
Right.
how probable it is, like if the salt key is not in the same database, but still can hacker guess the salt key and run the algorithm and find a match?
Yeah, chances would be less. Chances would be definitely less. Definitely, I agree. So that's what you are doing. By not keeping the salt in the same database, in the same table, you are basically randomizing the data, right? What I
Yes,
think is the chances would be less, definitely less. But again,
still possible, right?
yeah, it's still possible, right? So what you do is you randomize the system more. You put more randomization in your system by a second two-factor authentication, right? A second factor, like an OTP,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
nowadays a lot of systems actually force you to always use an OTP,
Mm-hmm.
okay, or a RSA generated token,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially in banking, insurance, and all.
Right.
They use that randomization.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying that security, you have to keep innovating on the security model. You can't just say, okay, login password is enough for, securing our systems, right? So that's where the customization might be required, right? So that customization should be doable actually. That is one more goal of Spring Security. Now, regardless of what mechanism you use, the authentication should have the same behavior, right? So, how the authentication should work at a higher level? Let's say I'm trying to log in into a system. So I will pass the login password, right? Then the system will use the login ID, right, to find the encrypted password and then match it with the password, incoming password. But hang on, the password I sent while logging is plain text. The password stored in database is encrypted. So how will we do this match?
It takes the salt key, run the algorithm again on the this plain text password and
Right.
match with that.
Yes. So we will encrypt the incoming password and then match it with the stored encrypted password. We will not do the reverse, and we can't do it actually. There are algorithms, as you know, which will encrypt passwords only one way. You won't be able to decrypt them. So you need to also ensure that you are using those algorithms, such those algorithms, so that reverse engineering will become much more difficult. Okay. All right. Very good. So, so that these steps should remain common no matter what authentication mechanism you are using. Same goes with authorization. No matter what mechanism you use, the end result should remain same. Now I'll come back to this slide a little later. Okay, so just hang on. So now if you see security in Spring, that module Spring Security is based on uh, a couple of APIs through which your application will pass through. So for example, if you want to implement Spring Security, the first thing you have to do is you have to implement a filter chain that is called Spring Security Filter Chain. So this Spring Security Filter Chain is a known name in Spring Security module. So let me show you one example, then it will be much more clear. So you have to implement first. You have to specify. I mean the slides are a little out of order. First thing you have to do is this actually. One second. Where is that? Yeah. So first thing you have to do is you have to configure a security filter chain, which is represented by a servlet filter. So every request coming on your system should be intercepted for security, right? Once your security module is satisfied about the credentials and the access control of the request of a user, of a principal, then only it should let the actual API to work on that request, right? So this Spring Security Filter Chain will do precisely that. It will intercept all requests. You see, we have mapped the filter, servlet filter to /* means all the requests must be intercepted by this filter chain. So once this request is intercepted by filter chain, then the security will work. But hang on, how will the system know where to find the database? I'm talking about authentication as of now. Okay, so you have configured that Spring Security Filter Chain. Now, how will the system know where are the credentials stored? How will the system know for what roles, which resources are allowed? So these information must be provided as configuration metadata to the system by the developer. So to do that, we have a special class called Web Security Configurer Adapter. So we must extend from this class and we have to write two methods, configure and configure global. Configure global will be used to define the source of the credentials during the match. So configure global is for authentication and configure is for authorization. So let me show you the authorization.
कब होगा?
One second, guys, just a minute.
कब हो गई ना?
All right. So here if you see authorization, how we will do authorization? By providing a method, this configure method. This is a callback method. So when your application will start up, this method will be called only once, and all the details of this method will be cached in memory. So here, do we want to protect our CSS image JavaScript files? Well, it depends. So generally, we do not, we make these files accessible to even to non logged in users. Okay, not authenticated users. बेटा अभी नहीं करो दूसरा फोन ले लीजिए ऑलराइट दूसरा मम्मी का फोन ले लो okay, so for that we will specify a method called permitall. So first you will get one date object injected by Spring Security Framework called HTTP security. So this method, this object can be used to configure the access control to be used by authorization mechanism. So here we are saying all the CSS images and just JS files will be accessible to everybody. Okay, even to not logged in users, not non-authenticated users. But if I want to do any edit work on the accounts entity, then I will represent, then I have to have a role of, then the principal has to have a role of admin. Okay. The same next one, if I want to do any other operation on account, then the role could be either user or admin. Directly on accounts, then authenticated. So that means you must, the principal must authenticate before, and it can do any of the, it can consume any of the accounts URI or account services. Okay, fully authenticated. Well, have you ever seen, some might have noticed, when you do a checkout on Amazon, okay, suppose you are you have logged in Amazon and then try to buy something by doing a checkout, it will ask you for the login password again and again every time you do a checkout. That is full authentication, means they recheck your credentials even if you are logged in currently, right? Or if you try to access your orders, they demand the password again. So that is fully authenticated, means you try to ensure that there is no ambiguity left behind. Okay, so that is fully authenticated. Anonymous means the resources or the URI can be accessed via one second. The resources can be accessed to any users, okay, who even does not allow cookies to be set. Because see, cookies is a mechanism, but many applications actually track the users by their usage pattern. Any question on this slide, guys? So this is the configuration you would have to write manually in the configure method for authorization, for controlling authorization. Now in the configure method you can also specify a couple of things. So what do you think? Should we protect the login JSP page? Should we protect the login JSP page?
No.
No.
Not at all, right? Common sense. We need to make it accessible to everyone. That's why for login page, there is a special provision here, separate provision. So it should be allowed, and logout functionality should also be allowed to everyone. Okay. So these are some of the configurations you can do in the configure method for authorization. Now on the login GSP page, you can, if you want to do the authentication in a standard way, like a form-based basic authentication, then you can use this kind of form where you will have two input fields, and the name values for these input fields will be username and password. Precisely these one, username and password. The expected keys for generation of an authentication request token will be used by user form and password. Okay. So how will we configure web authentication now? Well, the web authentication will work based on a fixed schema. So that schema will have a number of tables like user role and so many others. So you can configure that DB schema in the configure global method. So suppose if I want to use JDBC authentication. So behind this JDBC authentication call, there are a couple of methods being called one by one. All right. So we can configure a factory kind of API like data source, where you can inject the data source and tell the system that all the data during authentication should be picked up from that data source. Sorry. So under the hood, all the credentials, your login passwords are saved in a DB schema, and the DB schema will, I mean, your framework, Spring security framework, will work through a number of SQL scripts to check the credentials in a transparent manner. You don't have to write any code for that. Okay. So there are tables like users, group members, group authorities, through which you can map the components. You can see the details of these tables on Spring security documentation. So every field is well documented there. Every column is well documented. What is the purpose and all. You can add or remove new columns to it. Okay. So as you see fit. So that could be one way to look at it. Okay. Now password encoding. How are we going to, you know, encrypt our passwords? So that could be done using different types of encoders. Don't use MD5 encoders. As you know, MD5 algorithm has been compromised long back, some 4 years back, right? So don't use that. You should use a high-end, very advanced level encryption technology like SHA-256 is pretty good. But again, I think you should go for SHA 512 or 1024. So what kind of algorithm you will use depends on two factors. Of course, it should not compromise your system, but you need to also understand that this is not the answer some interviewer is looking for. for Spring Security. So here you need to look at the time taken by the encryption algorithm to work. So that should not be also too high, right? That should not be also too high. So if you want faster responses, you may like to go for an intermediate level encryption algorithm rather than a very high encryption algorithm. Do we need to have a very high end encryption algorithm always?
It depends on which resource we are securing.
So suppose if I use a medium level algorithm, encryption algorithm along with an OTP, will it be good? Will it be fine?
Yes, OTP, yes,
Right.
it's added security.
Exactly. So it is not always, mandatory that you should have the highest level of encryption available in the industry at that point in time, right? So that OTP will make it pretty random, correct itself. So you don't need very high levels of algorithm all the time. So, okay, so don't apply a very time consuming algorithms in your application. So you should take a call, with OTP also. That will help. That helps, really helps. All right. So authentication can be done with different options. Okay, you can use a third-party authentication mechanisms also. What we discussed was what Spring provides out of the box. Okay, so Spring does not say that okay, that is the only, way. Spring security is the only way to secure your application. Spring has always been willing to work with third-party frameworks for the same task, right? That has been the strength and beauty of Spring. It never tries to restrict competition, right, among frameworks. It actually tries to facilitate competition. So you can use a third party LDAP server also. You can use JAS login module also. That is also possible. So you can have a number of options which you can use. Kerberos. So some of you might have used Kerberos in the past, right? OAuth, that is catching up a lot nowadays. OAuth 2 authentication. So you can also use profiles, okay, during development to hard code the passwords to test to perform testing faster. All right. Spring Security Library. So Spring provides also a tag library through which you can control access to individual JSP elements on your JSP page. For example, here, if I want to control access to this link tag, the second yellow box, okay, then I can specify. I can use this Spring tag called JSP tag called security authorize. What will security authorize do? It will check the role of the principal. If the role is not admin, it won't generate this anchor tag itself on the screen. Only the admins will be able to see this link. All right. If I want to display the name of the principal on the screen, I can again use another tag, Spring security authentication. All right. So there are two options. Either you can use access attribute or you can use URL. Okay. So if you use URL, then there should be an AND matcher in the configure method for that, because now URL will represent the resource, right? And all URL resources are mapped in configure method. So you must mention that if you are using a role directly here, has role, so this is like using Spring Expression Language directly. SPL, spell. Okay. So in that case, you can directly go ahead. Hmm, yep. Now method security, you can also control access to a method. But why would I like to control access to a method? Well, as you see, security, one way to make your application more secure is put multiple layers rather than keeping all the security features in a single layer, right? So in order to provide some additional levels of security, we can use method security also. Suppose one layer, first layer is compromised, then the second layer will help us to thwart the attacks on our systems, right? So in Spring, it is possible to achieve method level security by just putting an annotation on the method. So here you can use a couple of options to provide to method level security. One is using JSR 250 annotation, that is roles allowed. So this roles allowed annotation, if you see, is not part of Spring framework. It is actually a J2E specification. So here you can specify which role are allowed to call this method. Spring has its own annotation to do the same job. So like secured. Okay. So secured also takes roles. Now why we have two options here? It's a historical reason actually. Spring came up with this solution first. And J2E basically followed and got the implementations of having it. Okay. So which one is more portable, secured or roles allowed? I can run roles allowed based API on any container, not only in Spring container, right? Because this annotation is in JavaX package, right? So any implementation which has JavaX as the API, we can run this application there. But if I use the Spring API explicitly, then we are tied to Spring. Though that is not a that is not a bad idea, but preferable would be to use roles allowed over secured. Both are available, okay, in Spring Security. All right. All right. There is a third option also called pre-authorize. So this can also be an option to be used. Though again, its usage is deprecated in future version. So this can be avoided. So the most preferred way would be to use roles allowed. Okay. Now working with filters. So far what we have seen is how we can configure the authentication and authorization metadata. Okay. But we have not seen how actually the Spring Security works under the hood. So as we said, there is a Spring Security filter chain, right? So this filter chain is actually responsible to ensure that nothing is left to chance and your authentication and authorization works without fail under any circumstances, right? So what are the steps we have to make sure are are going to be performed while doing authentication and authorization? We have to make sure that once the user is authenticated, the user is never again asked or challenged for authentication until unless there is a session timeout, right? You have to also enforce the authorization. You have to manage the logout. If the user logs out explicitly, then the session should be destroyed for that user, right? Okay. So how we can all do this? Let's try to see that. So this is the configuration if you want to do it manually. If you are using Spring Boot, you don't have to do this configuration. If you just select Spring Security as a one module required in your project, the configuration will be done automatically. So ultimately, if you see under the hood, this filter chain is nothing but a chain of a number of servlet filters. And when a request comes in, this filter chain will work on that request to see if this request can be passed to the dispatcher servlet or any other servlet you are dealing with. So this is a completely pluggable architecture. The actual REST layer or UI layer will not be affected because of security. Okay, just a minute. Somebody has come. Yes, student. All right. So earlier, if you see, before Spring Security was floated, there was a company called ACD. You must have heard about it. So that was acquired by Spring actually, and they then converted that, rebranded that product to Spring Security. So this is just for your knowledge. So actually, under the hood, how it is working, there are 5 inbuilt servlet filters. 5 inbuilt servlet filters. Okay, in this filter chain, each of these filters will have a role. Okay. One second, guys. Each of these filters have a definite role. So why we need 5 filters? Why not only one filter? Because these roles, okay, must be pluggable. Or these tasks, responsibilities must be pluggable. Along with this should be extensible also. I can introduce a 6th or a 7th filter also in this chain. That is also possible. That makes it extensible. So that's why there are 5 initial filters. Okay. So let us see what all these filters do actually. The first filter, if you see, security context persistence filter, or what I call it SCPF in short. Okay, so suppose the first request comes in. Okay, right now assume that the user is not logged in and user is trying to access a URL of a resource. Okay, and the resource is not secured, means the resource is publicly available. So once a request comes like that, then the request will pass through this security filter, and since this resource is not protected, the access to this resource will be granted by the system. Okay, nothing will change. None of the filters will take any action for this request. Okay, now if you try to access a secured resource, then again this request will pass through the same set of filters in a particular order. The order is
top to bottom. So first security context filter is called, then logout filter is called. Sorry. Okay, so in this case, what will happen is, if the user does not have access or is not authorized to see that secured resource, then what will happen? The filter security interceptor will throw an exception, and that exception will be handled by exception translation filter, which will reroute you to the login form that, hey, you are not logged in and still you are trying to access a secured resource. Okay. Now let's say the user submits the login request. So the login request will be handled by the username password authentication filter. But hang on, how will the system know that this request is a login request? How will you how will where did we tell the system that this is a login request? Here you see that here we had configured this login page. So here you mentioned that the URL for login will be /login JSP, right? So when the request is sent to login.jsp, then the system knows that it's time to do authentication. So authentication will be done by this username password authentication filter, UPAF. If the authentication is successful, remember you're doing authentication, just authentication here. Authentication is successful, then the request will the request is successful and you are going to some other page. If it fails, you will redirect to the failure URL. Now once logged in, now if I try to access a secured resource, at this time the filter security interceptor will look into the authorization details, and if my role is entitled for that resource, I will be granted access to that. So can you tell me, out of these filters, which one is actually going to perform authorization?
Filter security interceptor.
Exactly, the last one. Thank you so much. Which one is doing authentication? It's pretty obvious.
That username password.
My password.
The third one, yes. Very good. If the required role is not mentioned for a request, the request would fail and you will be routed to another page also. Okay. Logout. So if you do an explicit logout, then the logout filter will be activated, and that will remove the session objects from memory. Okay. So these are the 5 inbuilt filters in that filter chain, and each one has a definite role. Okay. In the exam, there will be definitely a question: what is the sequence of? I mean, there is a high possibility. I can't say definitely. What is the sequence of these filters? Okay, so just remember the sequence, that is important.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Suganya.
So in case of logout, right, the second filter will get triggered. So it's just a filter, right? So once the filter does the work, like what, like will it like go to the next one in filter chain? Like there is no point, right? Or the filter itself will return the response.
See, servlet filters doesn't. I mean, if you have two servlet filters, let's say A and B, right? So it is not necessary that once the task of servlet A is done, the request will always land up in task B, right? Servlet B, filter B. It depends upon the. It is conditional. If you
Right,
want, you can return from there itself, right?
right,
You don't need to say just do filter. That's all.
right. So logout filter basically checking that whether it's a request for logout or not. If not, it is passing. Otherwise, it basically returns from there.
Exactly. So it will also look for the URL whether the request is a logout request or some other non logout request. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. You can also add your own filters in this filter chain at any place, not only at the end. You can add it at the beginning or any after any other thread existing filter. So you can define your own filter class. Sorry. Define it as a bean. Okay, so first you define a filter and then you extend it from some existing filter. Then you can define it as a bean and then you can use the add filter method or add filter or add filter after. Okay, so if you want to add a filter and retain all the existing filters, you can use add filter after. Okay, if you want to replace an existing filter, then use add filter. Okay, add filter. The method names behaviors are different. Remember that is a very important point. Add filter after will add your custom filter and will not remove an existing one. Add filter will remove one, will replace one. Okay, with your own custom filter.
Which one it will replace?
Which one it will replace? Yes, that the filter replace will be the class which you are extending, the filter class.
Okay. Right.
So what we have understood is the Spring Security, if you see, is pretty flexible, okay, and it addresses almost all the needs of security at the application level in our application. It does not provide HTTPS. HTTPS has to be done still the good old way by providing certificates. That is different. Okay, so this is it for today, and I think we have almost covered everything. Okay, whatever we had in the agenda. Now, the next course of action for you is going to appear for the exam, right? So as you know, this certification course has two important milestones. First is to complete the online classroom sessions and then appear for an exam, right? So there is a cool off period, okay, which is provided, which is basically, recommended by the Pivotal company. So for the next 2 weeks, you are going to just cool off, and after 2 weeks, you will receive your exam voucher. Okay. So that exam voucher, let me throw some light on that. 1 second.
And I got an email, right, that something has been uploaded in the portal, and we have to finish in 7 days and upload back. But when I like logged in, I see some kind of lab for cloud. Like I'm not sure like what is expected.
Can you send me that mail?
Yeah, sure. Let me send it right now.
Yeah, I can check it. What is it? They might have to do something new. I'll check it up. So there are a couple of other courses. Okay, so first finish this course, and definitely nowadays, certifications have a big value. As you see, industry is looking at you know resources who are not only skilled but also certified, because that guarantees them better quality of work for them, right? So it is important that uh, you get certified by at an individual level or at a company level. Both are possible. So there are a couple of courses which you may like to follow up with this course, so you can get the details of that. Now coming to the where is it? So there are some labs also possible. Okay, so you can just check that those labs. Ultimately, in the exam, there will be some 50 questions. Okay, you are supposed to answer. Here is the details of the certification. So you can give the exam online. Okay, you don't have to go to any center. You will receive a certification voucher after 2 weeks by email, and that will remain valid for 3 months. So you need to plan plan when exactly you are going to appear for the exam. So you have 3 months to prepare for that. Best is to take it as soon as possible, right? Do not uh, do not keep too many work on the day of the exam. Okay, keep yourself relatively free, most probably on a weekend. That would be better actually. Okay, and you can take this exam from any location, even from your home on your laptop, no problem at all. Okay. For any other information, you can contact this email ID, education@pivotal.io. So that will help you further with the exam. So in the logistics of the exam, I don't play any role. So you can address your questions to this email address itself. Okay. So any questions left, guys?
Is it possible to go to a proctor center in US, or it has to be online?
Or what do you prefer, online or?
The online, the problem is, I don't know, sometimes the network problem during the exam, if the network is flickered,
No,
then
that
what?
could be a possibility. Yeah, but see, the point here is if such eventuality plays out, you would be given another chance. So I don't think you should.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, okay,
if yeah, they can detect if there was a problem actually. So it should not. I don't. I gave the exam online actually. Okay, so it was better than just going to a center and spending a lot of time out there. So.
okay.
So it is much better actually. So you will get 50 questions in the exam. You need to, and you will get 90 minutes. You have to answer 38 questions successfully, at least 38. So the passing score is 76%. Okay, so do let me know how much marks you got actually. I would eagerly be waiting for your responses. So it was a pleasure and pleasure and honor to help you with this courseware. I hope you also got some really good insights into application development, not only through Spring, but in general, right? And of course, there were some hiccups about logistics, the timings, but hopefully everybody was patient enough to, you know, give it another shot. So I'm really thankful for that. So, any other thoughts, any other thing pending here at your end? Anything you want to know? Anything?
Okay, so what are the other things you suggest for the preparation of an exam as an exam point of view?
Okay. Yeah. So as we said, the exam is of course pretty important, because the problem is, if you do not clear it, uh, okay, then there is no second attempt actually. Okay, that is uh, a big challenge actually, because generally these exams give you a second chance, but here you don't have a chance, so you need to get another voucher if you want to appear for the exam second time. Okay, so how we can make our our preparation basically rock solid, right? The first thing you should do is whatever slides I have covered, okay, you should read that, go through all those slides at least twice. In the exam, all the questions will be from the slides, materials on the slides. All right. There will not be a single question outside the slides. Apart from that, do all the labs. Okay. And if you have any doubts, okay, that if some scenario plays out in your mind, you can try to verify that with a small POC, something like that. That way, I think that is enough to prepare yourself well to sail through the exam with flying colors. Okay. So the most important document for preparation is, sorry, once again, is the slides. Only the slides. There won't be any question outside the slides. Okay.
Can we give mock test? Is there any some kind of mock?
Well, officially we do not have any mock test actually. Okay, but I think there you can find some materials online. There could be some mock tests which will give you an idea what the questions are. Let me tell you, the questions are, if you see there is a question as a, where is it? There was a question actually. So you can see the questions will be MCQ. Okay, always MCQ. You don't have to write code or something like that. The questions will be MCQ only. Okay. Uh, and you have to read the questions very carefully. That is one important point. Don't assume. Okay, but generally what happens, experienced guys become a little casual. They don't give enough attention. So don't fall into that trap. Always look at every question, you know, clearly, carefully, and then answer the question. The questions are based on the theory what we have covered. For example, here is one question, right? So the questions you see will be pretty lame if you just read it carefully. They're not going to be pretty tough for an experienced guy like you actually. Okay, so preparing well, I don't think should be a problem for this batch, I guess. At least for the youth, three guys should not be a difficult task. But of course, there is always an element of doubt in mind that what if, I mean, I'm not able to clear it or something else. I will tell you, be fearless. First of all, be fearless. You guys have achieved a lot in life already. So you have nothing to prove it to anyone. Just be fearless. Okay. Go through the slides, as I said, twice or thrice. There could be some mocks. I am not aware about those mocks actually. There could be some mocks available online, but we do not provide any mocks officially as such. Okay. So you can look into those mocks to see what kind of questions could be there. The questions, what I have seen, 50 questions. I have already discussed a couple of questions with you in the exam. It's during the course itself, if you remember, right? Wherever possible, I had mentioned that, right? So preparing the exam, if you see, I mean, even if you don't prepare the exam, I'm sure all of you will clear the test with at least 85, 86% marks actually. I'm confident about it. I'm not sure about your confidence. But what I have seen from our discussions and interactions, you guys are pretty confident. You guys have a pretty high chance to clear it without any preparation actually. So, again, just well, but that doesn't mean you should not prepare well. Go through the slides twice. Read the facts carefully. Okay, like that add a filter and add a filter after. What is the difference? You should remember that. The confusion happens during the exam is what is the difference? There is a very small slight differences. You need to give enough attention to those aspects. Okay. So this is it. Any other questions?
Yeah, for the voucher, what exactly happens? You would be receiving it from Pivotal or Spring Source?
That will come from Pivotal.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? So you need to wait for at least 2 weeks. It may take some more time actually. So whatever time they take to issue the voucher, your 3 months period starts after that. Okay. So suppose if you get the voucher not in 15 days but after 1 month. So you still have 3 months after that 1 month to clear the exam. Okay, to pay for the exam. All right.